What up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. As you can see, we're two men gaming it again. Ruben had to be at a dinner, but he may not be able to go or be here, but ball don't stop. So we're here to talk about men playing with balls. Pause set aside. Christian, what's up, cousin?
I'm good.
Very, very nice. Well, okay. So here we go talk about today. We're going to go over some surprising teams, some disappointing teams, and this new kind of, I don't know if you can call it a full section or whatever, but we're going to talk about, I guess it's basically, I've come up with a few takes, whether they're hot or cold. You decide. So it's kind of like a stock market sort of ideas, what I had behind it. So basically, I'm going to say the idea. If you're putting stock into it, you can make your case for that or whatnot. If you think I'm completely full of shit, you can let that go. But before that, Ruben has not been able to be a part of any of the podcasts for this upcoming season, but I think as a little sort of commemoration to the bro and the fact that we were watching this game together for a bit, Chicago and Toronto, quite an interesting game to say the least. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I put money that DeMar DeRozan was gonna have like one of those coming home games where he put up like a crazy amount, but he got relatively clamped, or not even that he got clamped. He just wasn't taking too many shots, and whether that was because of them playing crazy defense, which with the Raptors always has been their calling card, or he was definitely getting frustrated towards the end. But yeah, what are sort of some quick takeaways or thoughts you had about that game, Chin?
I think like the biggest thing I've taken away, like even from the Raptors, like not even from this game, but from quite a few games now, is that they are very good at slowing down like the star player on any given team. So I don't know who they had played previous night or the nights before, but I just noticed like a lot with their play that they are like a defensive minded team, and that really translates to their offense. I mean, you saw it in this game where there was like numerous defensive stops, and that kind of turned into the end of the game just like that, where it was like maybe like 104, 102, and then all of a sudden there's a few blocks down the way. OG Anunoby had a clutch block, and then transitioned to a fast break dunk, and that was the end of the game practically. So I think that's really how they're going to win their games, to be honest. Because like I wouldn't say they don't have any offensive minded players, but it's the fact that they don't have that star, obviously. But I do think they are a good team. I think the Bulls, like personally, I think they are a very good team. It's just that they're really missing out on some key pieces. Lonzo Ball, I think, is needed for this team's success. I think they don't really thrive with Alex Caruso being the starting point guard. I don't think he's really designed to be a starting point guard in any way. He really is like that spark plug off the bench, defensive, like oriented, like specialized player. And that's not someone you obviously, I think, need coming every night playing like close to 35 minutes, right?
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, solid. I guess for me, yeah, OG Anunoby, crazy clutch. That whole team is very much like. I like how you spoke about how they're able to slow down a team's best player, and I think that's like their main thing when it comes to defense is that when it comes to this sort of, obviously the big narrative is that big 6'8" death lineup that they have, and while that's obviously something that is a big thing, I think it's just overall, like, you obviously still have guys like Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr. They're all just a very well coached, well oiled machine when it comes defensively. And one guy that I think really had somewhat of a coming out today was Christian Coloco. You know, the big thing with the Raptors is always like they don't have a legit center. There's no one that can really be like a full time, fully fledged rim protector. And I don't know, 5 blocks speaks that to me. Well, granted, like I think 3 of them came from one possession alone, but Christian Coloco was, in the limited time he's had, I think he's been able to really use his minutes to his advantage. And with Pascal being out for the next little bit, if there's anyone that I think has like the most to gain, I would say Christian Coloco is one of them. Obviously, I'm not saying he's going to blossom into this starting center caliber guy, but you know, my looking at his game, how he's able to be somewhat quick on his feet for a five. Again, the shot blocking was there. He seems like somebody who's sort of in that Ivica Zubac role where there aren't going to be any plays called for him, but he's a guaranteed like either low end 10 and 10 or 6 and 8 kind of guy. And when you look at when it comes to depth, that's something that you definitely want, I think. But yeah, overall solid game from the Raptors. They're a team that again, uh, you think of some of these like lower end teams, not to say they are, but the teams that don't have that sexy name, they don't have for lack of bias, they don't have a Giannis, they don't have a Jason Tatum, they don't have like that superstar, but they're hoopers for sure. But moving on from there, let's start. I'm a positive guy. Let's start with who's been our biggest surprises, Christian. I'll let you go first.
I mean, no shade to your Bucks, DJ, but I think they have been a big surprise coming out like 9-0. I kind of have viewed the East as a like part of the league that's kind of ultra competitive compared to the West, and I think like this is the type of conference where I feel. I mean, besides the Bucks and the Cavs, like everyone is pretty close knit, and I mean it's a long season to go still with 80, 81 games, 82 games. Um, but yeah, I have been surprised by the Bucks. In terms of players, I've been surprised by. No one's really surprised me all that much. Like no one has really blossomed. I mean, I know we're going to talk about him later, but I think Bol is definitely a conversation waiting to happen. I think he's been in the league. Was it 4 years now? 3 years? Um, I want to say it's three
This
or
is
four
fourth year.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, he's definitely one of those players where you kind of wrote him off, I think. And there was moments in the bubble where he came out and like you thought he might have got some burn, and then that faded away. I think he's been one of the biggest surprises to me, just because I did feel as if at the end of last season, Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter Jr. were players that were kind of cemented as the starting two um, for that team. And then with Paulo Banchero in, I am surprised he is getting minutes. But I think he really made the most of the time he has been getting, and now I think last game he got 35 minutes, so he might be taking over.
Yeah, he's been able to hold down that starter position. We'll definitely talk about him later, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I had the Bucks here too. It's not that I was thinking like this team's kind of gonna be underwhelming or whatever, but yeah, I don't. You can't tell me unless you're like the most unsensible Bucks fan and you think that like they're gonna go 82 and 0. 9 and 0 I don't think was in anybody's head. Obviously they're the best defense in the league right now. I think the Celtics are like 0.5 behind or something like that. So our boys play D. They got that good D. Nah, but I'm just gonna say it. This team is shaping up not just to be the best team in the Giannis era, but all time when it comes to the Bucks, and that's saying something. You got obviously Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with Marquez Johnson, Bob Dandridge, fucking what's his name, Oscar Robertson. How could I forget that man? And the Bucks, I think, are just a team that have a lot of low key talent throughout like their history. Obviously, you got Ray Allen, that whole roster, Michael Redd, the Mississippi Bullet, Monte Ellis. There's been a lot of like I guess like kind of underground ghosts in a sense. That kind of Lou Will esque where they aren't going to be the cover of any type of video game or anything like that, but they're hoopers, and I think that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this team. Now, obviously, Giannis is a box office name. That's going to be one of the top guys, like up until the day he retires. But outside of that, Drew Holiday is another guy that's always underlooked. He's just one of the most underrated players in this league to this day. And now he's like in the MVP conversation or in that bracket or whatever it was on like Basketball Reference. And then Brooke Lopez, the greatest player in Nets history, in a history that features guys like
Yep.
Jason Kidd. Well, granted, that was kind of well, he was in his prime, but Jason
Twilight.
Kidd, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. Brooke Lopez stands above all of them when it comes to the Brooklyn Nets. But no, Brooke has been super solid. I mean, you already saw last year the hole that was really left there. You know, I love Bobby. Everybody loves Bobby, but he isn't the 7 foot 300 pound force that Brooke really is. And not only that, Brooke's been shooting the ball really well. He's one of the best shooting fives when you ask me, and probably ask anybody else. But nah, I get just three players in the MVP race is crazy. And when it comes to just showing more love to Drew, I don't I was thinking resurgence, but then I kind of slashed that out, and I think he's really steadying this ship. I think the thing that really needs to be like made aware of is that while again, I think this is shaping up to be the best team in Giannis's tenure, this team is missing two key rotational players. Obviously, everybody knows Chris Middleton, 3-time All-Star, you know, kind of the steady hand, go-to shot maker down the stretch, hasn't been able to play his first game yet. But Pat Connaughton shoots 45% on catch and shoot threes. So, and we don't have that right now. And obviously, a lot of this team's like identity is in, you know, driving and kicking out, as is like a lot of teams. But Bucks maybe do it the best considering they got one of the biggest forces in Giannis. And it's just as great as 9-0 is, this team I think is going to be really scary once everyone's back. And shit, man, 82-0 coming soon. Nah, but I'm just very yeah. I'm not I don't know insulted or anything like that. I definitely this is a team I had on my surprising list, but to kind of pivot off of that, so we're not just completely talking about the Bucks here. I have the Magic. I know it sounds kind of like weird considering they're like 2-6 right now, or 2-8, whatever it may be. I wrote it like this: they're a shitty team record wise. That's fun to watch. I also had another thing where it said I think it has the potential to be Toronto on steroids. Again, that sort of nobody's under 6'6" lineup, but when you look at the size they have, they could legitimately run like there isn't a player under 6'9", 6'10" kind of thing. Obviously, you know, that's an inch or whatever, but you know, you got guys like Franz Wagner, Bull, who we just talked about, Paulo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr., Chumo Kiki, kind of a bum, but you know, he's tall. Nah, but I just think that the way this team is shaping up to be with Bull, who the way it is right now could be one of the biggest steals and like in this upcoming generation of basketball. You know, Paulo's coming as advertised. They have two guys who could really be number two options in Franz and Wendell. And this is all in the context of that they don't have Cole Anthony, who's out for a bit, Markel Fultz, who I think is going to really help steady that offense. And there's just so much untapped potential here. I think really, especially when it comes to Markel, because the only game I've been really to like key in on is the recent one they had with the Thunder. Everything else has kind of just been highlights, but you could see the way they played. They really just don't have the point guard to really just sort of center everyone up and kind of, you know, keep things steady. Because I think they gave up it was like a 12 or 15 point lead in the fourth, and obviously whenever a team does that, that's sort of like big yikes. But again, when you insert a guy like Markel Fultz, who, you know, granted is kind of in that D Rose resurgence mode, even though he never even reached the peak of what people expected him to be, they're going to be scary. I think they're going to be able to win like a lot of these close games that they're in. And yeah, I'm a big believer in what the Magic got cooking over there.
Yeah, I think I like definitely agree with the point. I think I especially like what you said about like the whole idea of comparing them to like the Toronto Death lineup, because I think it is like a very tangible thing where, you know, maybe they will have like short point guard on the floor, but at the end of the day, everyone else will be above 6'8", above 6'9", with Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, um, Wendell Carter, and Bobo on the floor. Like that is like in their kind of like maturity, that lineup could be like one of the better lineups in the NBA in the future, right? Like it's not like a overstatement, especially with how Paulo Banchero is playing. Like just had his first 30-point game, 33 and 15, like just a few nights ago. Like it's not an overstatement. This guy's a rookie, you know. This dude's like what, 20 years old, 19 years old. Like he's already coming out doing these things, and all their other players are kind of on that timeline. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, fuck it, I'll say it here. Hot take alert. Paulo Banchero, his rookie season is looking a lot like LeBron's in that they're coming in as a fetus and banging with the big boys. I mean, I obviously, when we look back at LeBron, well, especially for like our generation, we were like little ones. I wasn't even really watching basketball like that then. But if I had to like kind of bottle up what I think it'd be like, I think a lot of it would be with how Paulo's rookie season is going. Obviously, the big outlier is that I don't remember what the switch was from wins to losses, or like from wins from the season before LeBron to now, but that's probably the only thing that's kind of missing. But when you just look at how comfortable he is, how much he's be able to play his game and not really get sucked into, playing outside of his mantra, it's crazy to watch. Paulo Banchero is 100% him.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Switching off from that though, as much as it's great to talk about surprises when the league's doing good, basketball's doing good, everybody's doing good. Let's talk about who's been like the biggest disappointment in your eyes, at least. Who you got here?
Well, I mean, I think this one goes without saying, but I think the Golden State Warriors have had quite a bit of a shaky start. I really didn't expect this out of them, to be honest. Like, even with the sort of like management that they're going through with Clay, obviously, the stuff going between Draymond and Jordan Poole still lingering, I suppose, and like Steph Curry. Not really. I know he didn't play the last game. I believe that was just a rest night, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think they obviously know what they're doing. Like, I think they're going to steer the ship because they're coming off a chip and they didn't really change a lot relative to the squad. I just think there does feel like some sort of lack of cohesion with that team right now, and um, you know they are losing like games at the end of the day, and even if they can like get up to another standing somewhere at some point in the season, they obviously don't want to gun for 7 through 10 position in like the scale of the Western Conference, right? And it kind of seems like they might be like starting to fight. They're gonna have to realize that they're gonna have to start to fight for like these games. I think it does come with like losing out on a lot of the role players that they had last year. Um, Gary Payton, the second, obviously, I would say probably the most influential player besides Jordan Poole that was coming off the bench at the time. Um, Otto Porter Jr. I think he just started for the Raptors now,
Yeah,
or
sweeter
to start.
minutes.
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think they've just haven't looked the greatest, and Klay Thompson has been looking like a shell of himself, and a lot of people are saying he's not going to necessarily return uh, to his normal form, and that happens with players. I mean, I think he had a 7-3 game the other day, um, but that being said, they still lost that game. But yeah, other than that, I mean, the Lakers are a disappointment, but that's not a surprise. But
Of course not.
yeah, I think that's definitely my first. I mean, what did you have, DJ?
Well, I think just to add on a bit, I just think the main thing is when you look at all these championship teams the Warriors have been able to assemble, their benches. Well, granted, this team on paper has a lot of depth at the bench, obviously, a lot of talent. Wiseman, second overall pick. Jordan Poole had a breakout season. Moses Moody has been looking crazy good ever since like summer league and preseason stuff like that. And even like Patrick Baldwin Jr. I think is this big X factor looming over because prior to I think the college season, he was looked at as like a top 5 kind of guy, and then he had a god awful season in college, and then now 30th overall pick, he's on the Warriors. So it's another one of those kind of project guys I think could be looking at a kind of Jordan Poole esque thing, but you never know. And this is all just to say that there's no veterans here. I mean, Jermichael Green is probably their only vet. Dante DiVincenzo is someone I'm I'm excited and very interested to see how he's going to fit into the project of this whole like not really revamped but rebooted Warriors roster, going off of the norm of having like decent amount of veterans. Dante DiVincenzo, I think, is someone that's really going to help steady that. I mean, obviously I have that Bucks bias, but even before that, he's one of the best perimeter guards I feel. right up there with the Gary Payton the seconds of the world. Not nearly as athletic, but what he lacks in athleticism, I think they're pretty equal on defense, I'd say. What with Dante DiVincenzo, I think you get another sort of secondary playmaker. Not only that, when you looked at preseason, I really like the two-man game that him and James Wiseman were able to establish in their limited burn together. I think that's something that could really, really give a spark to this offense because right now it's like solely all Jordan Poole's shoes to get any sort of buckets when it comes to that second unit. And James Wiseman's obviously not a guy that can create his own shot. But when you have a person who has the ability to play that point guard role in Dante DiVincenzo, be looking up. But I agree 100%. When it comes to any team defending its title, the Warriors are off to probably the worst possible start you could have out of being like totally winless. But for me,
Yeah.
terms of disappointments, I got the Timberwolves here. They're at 500, but I don't know I don't remember how you were reacting to the trade, but I think everybody was sort of on this wagon of that's the piece, that's it. They're going to be one of the best teams in the West this year, and that's not to say that they can't get there, but through their first 10 games or so, it's very evident that this team doesn't fit together right now. That's not to say it can't happen, but I mean, here's Anthony Edwards quote. The smaller we go, the better it is for me. That's him kind of talking about how when you have this too big lineup, especially the fact that only one of them can really stretch the floor, paint gets clogged. If Rudy's not in the paint, you're not paying him any mind. And when you're looking at a guy like Anthony Edwards, who, yes, he can shoot the ball, he can get off his shot at multiple levels, but he really gets his money worth, or get your money's worth for him when he's being able to drive to the hole, create his own offense from there. And obviously, when Rudy's in there, that clogs it up, and you're not really able to be as effective. And a lot of that is evidenced by the fact that, to speak about Anthony Edwards again, he was this person that, like, I think everybody had penciled in as like, okay, he's winning MIP. He's gonna take this huge leap. Like Patrick Beverley dubbed him the next Jordan, and for a second, it all seemed very tangible. And as of right now, nowhere near that. And I think a lot of that comes again. They're just a very poorly constructed team. It's very top heavy. There's not really too much depth, and it's very mid. That's the word I kind of came up with. It's very mid given their top heavy roster, and you know this is all for me just to say I was genuinely never a big fan of the trade. I like the roster that they had last year. Jared Vanderbilt's one of my favorite players. Like when it comes to like this sort of like gadget, do it all, like good at everything, master of none kind of players. He's a guy that plays with his heart on his sleeve. That's the guys you want on your team. Malik Beasley, solid depth. And it's just, I think that they hedged the hopes of one championship in replacement of a core that could have maybe won more than one, but overall be steady for the future. You know, and even if you trade all the players back and you don't do that trading, you have like a Walker Kessler as like a more traditional center, because I think that's really one of the things they were looking for. Nas Reed is a great like backup that I don't think he's really getting enough burn. And if we were to talk about, well, we probably will talk about players we think could like be traded to different situations, he's one of the guys on my list for sure. And the Timberwolves, it for sure can turn around. We could be looking back at this in a few months from now and thinking like, man, this dude's stupid as fuck. But as of right now, I think it's just it's a lot of growing pains, and just the way it all looks right now is very like, again, you hedged all your bets for the hopes of winning one, when if you allow this team to really grow together, not to say they could be like a dynasty or anything, but if they win one together with this core, there's no doubt they could win another kind of thing.
Yeah. I think you've said most of it. I think the biggest thing is that like pretty much all the players on that team are just not playing to the potential of like where they should be at, really. You look at Rudy Gobert and he's really not doing the same thing he did last season. He's actually been. I mean, I have him on my fantasy squads because this is how I know he's been playing like shit. But he's really hasn't been a defensive oriented player this season. Like I think he's kind of stuck in between this role of like being the primary. Like obviously he is the primary center, but I think it's just the fact that he's playing beside Cat. It almost seems like he's been more passive than he has been when he played with Donovan Mitchell, where I think Rudy felt like he was operating a bit more and he still felt like that second option. And I do think like the system with having Cat in the play almost seems like Rudy's been taking less shots. He's been like has had a bunch of single digit games so far, and there was like numerous games last season where he was putting up like 20 and 20 on the regular. You know, like that was Rudy Gobert. Like in a nutshell, that's textbook. Um, and I do think Anthony Edwards should be doing progressively better. Like I think we saw it like all throughout last season where he was ready to make that leap. And I think they haven't given him the keys, and they kind of, if anything, in my opinion, taken the keys away from him by kind of, entrusting like some of the, I guess, the burden on like this other new star that's just emerged in their team. Whereas I do actually think I agree 100% with you, where I liked their roster way more last season, where it was like an actual system. Where I think Anthony Edwards today, if in that roster was playing in this season, would be able to like continue to grow because he's learning to play around role players and learning to play around like people who can like be a cone in the corner, people that can be like kind of that engine for the team, and he can be the scorer. But right now it's like I don't think anyone knows who's playing what. Like there's no responsibility on the floor because there's so many like big chefs in the kitchen. Like you need a sous chef, you need someone running the entrees, you need someone running the appetizers, but they're all just like head chefs like telling each other what to do. It almost feels like.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect analogy. They're all guys that have had or could have systems built around them when you look at that top of the
Even
rotation.
D'Lo,
But
like
yeah,
even
D'Lo's been stanking, man. Holy. But yeah,
yeah,
that's come deadline. I think they just need some more guard play and just more guys who can be a bit more passive. The one bright spot I will say is Jalen McDaniels is looking like he's shaping up to be one of those good like gadget do it all players. That's probably
yeah.
one of the only positives you can take from like these first 10 days. And then their defense is technically better than their offense. And I'm pretty sure they had like the best offense last year. And granted, a lot of that's based on the fact that, you got Anthony Edwards and Cat running wild, and now it's kind of stagnated a bit. But yeah, do you if you could, where did you have do you remember where you had Minnesota finishing, or like where you thought they'd be? Has that changed at all for you think?
I think I had them top five, but like around 5 and 4, and that's tough right now because I mean, not to go all the way off topic, but I think the way I've seen the Pels play, I think they're going to finish ahead of them
Oh,
personally.
for sure. I
Um, and then I mean, I do have the Nuggets in front of them. I can see the Warriors even taking past them, obviously, even if they're not playing that great right now. I don't think they're a top five team anymore in the West. I think they're the 6 or 7 seed.
I think that's probably where I about got them right now. But
Yeah,
yeah, any other sort of, wait, did you give your disappointment? Yeah, no, you said the Warriors. Any other
yeah.
like kind of disappointments you want to touch on? Anything at all?
The Timberwolves was my other one.
Mm,
To be honest, I think. I mean, there's obviously this kind of, I think, stirring pot between the 76ers, Heat, and Nets. And you could kind of say that all the same thing about them. Like I think they all have their like very minor problems that, at least for the Heat and 76ers, I think will be worked out. I mean, we know what's happening with the Nets right now. I wouldn't say that's a disappointment. If anything, that's just like you like not don't even bat an eye at that because it's
yeah.
just like it's one of those situations where it's kind of normal. Like it's not a situation where you're disappointed in how they're playing. It's you're disappointed in the outcome of a player's actions, and I think that has already set the tone for their season. They just fired Steve Nash. Kyrie Irving is suspended, so I I,
And then
I have
apparently Ime Udoka is going to coach him.
Yeah, like that's like the most problematic like news channel you could have for like the first 10 games for a team, and I think they're finishing at 8 seed in the best, in my opinion.
Dang, eighth seed. Did you see also that I think it was on Indeed or something that they're looking for a PR manager or coordinator kind of thing?
The Nets are.
Yeah,
That's I did not see that. That's funny though.
that's insane though. I mean, to speak about the Nets, it's just they have so much talent. There's so much. It's like the complete opposite of the Magic, where they have untapped potential. This team has all the tools, I think, to be one of the best teams in the league.
You've
Ben
seen all the
Simmons,
potential of
yeah.
all the players.
Ben
Sorry.
Simmons is one of the guys that can guard 1 through 5. Kyrie Irving can be a top 3 guard when he really wants to. Kevin Durant is still probably the second or third best player in the world, depending on who you ask. And they have all the shooters. Seth Curry can shoot it. Joe Harris led the league in 3-point percentage like the other year or something along those lines. And then it's just completely down the shitter, I think. I don't know if I have them as going down as far as eighth, but I don't think that they have anywhere. My highest, I would even then I feel a little iffy, is like fifth or sixth. Like I think they'll either be the sixth seed, I think, or probably around that 7th, 8th range. But I probably have more faith in the sixth seed, especially if KD is able to like remain healthy throughout the entire season and miss like minimal games. I don't even know what's going to happen with Kyrie. It's kind of all hinged on the fact that after this whole him kind of atoning and paying the fines, doing all the meetings and stuff like that, that he just wants to play ball. Granted, if you told me he retired, I wouldn't be that surprised. Kyrie just seems like that kind of guy, and yeah, I will say this is going to be a crazy 30 for 30 documentary or 60 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I don't know, man. I actually think I confidently have them at the 8. Like, let me just name this real quick, right?
Okay.
Bucks for sure. Bucks, Cavs, Celtics. That's already 3.
Yeah.
The Raptors, I think, are the better team than them. Like, they will be at least 7th if the Nets are 8th. I would. The 76ers and Heat are gonna pick it up. They gotta, and that's okay. Bucks, Cavs, Celtics, Raptors, 76ers, Heat. And if I had to take the parlay on the Bulls and Hawks being better than the Nets, I would for 100% take them. Especially the Hawks, in my opinion. I think the Hawks have the best backcourt probably in the NBA right now.
Oh man, we didn't get to talk about the Hawks. Hawks are cooking. Oof.
The Hawks are cooking. They're working. I would not take the Nets over them. I wouldn't even take the Nets over the Bulls. I think the Bulls at least have unproblematic players that can get it done. Like DeMar DeRozan is that guy. He's gonna at least help them like steer the ship to a 6 seed, 7 seed. I don't think the Nets are finishing like sixth,
Shit.
fifth.
When you put it like that, yeah, but it's just again, I'm a big optimist, and
It's a
when
long
you
season.
when you have Kevin Durant, anything is possible.
If you
Anything's
have him for
possible.
if you have him for 82 games, yeah,
True. Like I mean, think about last year. They were the number 1 seed before he went down with his injury and missed like 2 or 3 months.
that
Fell
is
all the
true.
way to like the play-in.
Yeah, I think it's just like what we've realized in the NBA is that no super team really wins these days. Like I personally think since the Heatles, like you could say, okay, well, okay, not since the
The
Heatles,
Warriors are an
since,
outlier. They don't
yeah,
count. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but like if you were really to like look at the Warriors now, that's not a like sure you could say it's a super team, but that's not a super team. Like that team is constructed from the ground up. But like the Nets and the Heatles, that those are super teams, and
Yeah.
that's like
You
a
you
question.
can't buy a championship
Yeah,
nowadays. That's for
yeah.
sure.
And I just think like that formula has already run its course and it's never going to be reintroduced into the NBA. I think like this team is bound to fail. It's looking like a Lakers 2012 experiment team all over again.
Damn.
Even though those players are not at like the cusp of their career, but
It's even
I just think
worse then, because yeah, these guys were all like Well, Harden was he was kind of on the tail end of his no, yeah, all three of those guys were still relatively in their prime when like they were together.
The Lakers
No,
or
the Nets.
oh yeah, they're all still like relatively top five players in their position respective positions for sure. I mean, yeah, I don't know. You could say the same about the Lakers. That's like the same 2012 experiment too. But I don't know. Russ is playing pretty nice. I could see them making a resurgence. Hot take. That's my
Hey,
hot take.
that's a perfect segue into this little stock session we got. Do you think Benchbrook is sustainable? Like, are you putting stock into the fact that he will 100% stay in this sort of role?
I think like it's hard to say if they're gonna want to keep him in this role, but I do think they're going to create a system that makes it work. In my head, I think what really shines about it is the fact that Westbrook is able to play his game in terms of being like the floor general on the floor. I think when you take that away, when he plays with LeBron on the floor, like in like the same sort of parallel time, I think he loses his game because he's not meant to play off the ball. He's definitely meant to have the ball in his hands, and that's who Russ is. And I think the thing is when you can limit that to 28 minutes per game, and then you have LeBron playing the other like 35, like that's actually a pretty competent and like I think trustworthy like system. I mean, Westbrook coming off the bench, like that sounds good. Doesn't matter how washed he might be compared to his former self. Like Westbrook off the bench, that doesn't you don't hear that anywhere else in the league. Like I don't really think like you could say Jordan Poole is like amongst the best six men in the league, Tyler Harrow, but Westbrook, in my opinion, could win six man of the year just coming off the bench for sure. So I do think it's sustainable. I mean, they have won their last two games, and Westbrook has, or no, they lost today, I think.
Yo, yeah,
Um,
they
yeah,
choked that shit.
yeah.
It was a
But
bad loss. Yeah.
Westbrook is like not in my opinion, is not the problem.
Yeah,
But
no, I definitely agree on that. I just feel the only thing though is that he's performing so well in this role that Darvin Ham I think is probably gonna have to cave in and like start him. And I guess okay, the two ways I'll approach this is the one, if it were to happen. So we'll start with that. If this were to happen, I think they should do it where they stack the minutes where, he maybe plays his first five or so or four with the starters, getting it in where he can kind of thing. And, subbing him out, letting those guys, play throughout the first bit or whatever it may be. And then once you sub them out, sub him back in and kind of that's when you let him kind of go back to that sort of West, Benchbrook role where, it's his playground. Do what you got to do to get us a bucket, make us succeed and stuff like that. Because, yeah, Benchbrook, for all it's worth, has been very successful, I think. Granted, it's only what, maybe a 3 or 4 game like sample size, so take all that with the biggest grain of salt you can. But speaking of the recent game against the Cavs, and like the first bit of it, the Lakers were looking deadly. I think they came out to like a 9 point lead at one point, which is crazy thing to say about that Lakers team. And I think Westbrook must have had like 10 points in 3 or 4 minutes or something crazy like that. So it was looking like he was going to be cooking. Granted, ended the game with like 7 turnovers, but it's it's looked solid so far. And I just hope that it doesn't get to the point where they take that success that he's had in that role and automatically assume he's got all his groove back. He's going to be able to go back into that starting position because I I'm more on the fact that it is sustainable, and I think they should do that just because I think that gives them the best chance to win. You know, with Patrick Beverly still being there, even though he didn't play today or he's not going to play for the next little bit because he's sick or whatever. The way this team is constructed, I think is best suited to Russ coming off the bench. And you're 100% right. Where you know any team that has somebody of the caliber of Russell Westbrook as a bench player is crazy. And it's not even like this is the first time this happened with LeBron teams. I mean, shit, man. You could say this guy won LeBron one of his one chips. I think it's maybe a second one, the Ray Allen shot.
the Ray Allen shot
Yeah,
coming off the bench too.
yeah. I'm pretty sure he was off the bench during those times.
Yeah,
Granted, he
I
that's
think
like
it was,
completely different because spot up shooter, guy who needs the
yeah,
ball kind of thing. But
yeah.
I hope it happens, but I just think that the way that everything's going, how Westbrook is feeling himself when he like has his like spurts on the off the bench. As much as I hope it doesn't happen, I like it's sustainable in theory, but in terms of how what I think will actually happen, I don't think they're gonna fully do that for the whole year. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think Lakers in like the one thing I've known about the Lakers, and I've studied this just based off, like how they really perform as a team. Their coaching systems are ass. Their development,
Offensively, yes, but
yeah,
defensively, dogs.
yeah. Yeah, like their development in terms of just like being able to figure out like what's best suited for their team, I don't think it's ever aligned well. The only reason they won that one chip in Orlando is because they had the Disney magic.
Oh shit,
They went. I'll say it, man. That chip was not shit, bro. Like
Mickey.
like if we're talking about like how the Warriors had a bad turnaround from like coming off a chip, they did just as bad, and the Warriors are gonna pick it up. Let's be honest, they will. But this Lakers squad has not been the same since they went off that funnel cake.
Damn. Holy, that's a hot take. But the way they're playing it is actually not all that hot.
Yeah, I mean, it's been like a 3-year experiment, and I mean, you would have thought like Russell Westbrook would have improved the team, and I get like he didn't fit into the system, whatever. But the truth is, like LeBron and AD have been a part of the problem too. I mean,
Yes.
like
Yes.
AD cannot stay healthy, and even when he's on the floor, he doesn't want to play center. This guy's like honestly the biggest pussy in the league. Like when it comes to like when it actually comes to like getting down and dirty and actually trying to win a game, I feel that AD does not have that mental,
He
and
doesn't
LeBron,
have that dog.
he doesn't got that dog in him. He really doesn't. Um, I mean, LeBron is LeBron. I respect LeBron, but I also think LeBron is just like one of those players, in my opinion. And I mean, it's been said, and you can. I think a lot of people will agree with me on this. That's not a hot take, but he doesn't make players the best around him. He's either the player that makes teams like great around him, or like it's just not working. I don't think there's it in between personally. And he's sometimes like, I mean, in the past, I think he's been bailed out by the fact he's had like prime D Wade beside him or prime Kyrie. Like that's just my opinion though. Like he's got a not so great like not prime AD, and all of a sudden they're not winning games. Like I don't know, man. I'm okay. Maybe I am a LeBron hater. Let me just say that.
Yeah, I think you definitely are.
But I don't know. I think like he's been given like free reins to do a bunch of things, and I feel that like even with all the decision making and all of like choices, like LeBron hasn't been able to actually steer a team that was constructed by him, like to the. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. The LeBron, I could talk about LeBron for a long time. I feel.
Okay. The only thing I will agree with is the fact that AD's a pussy. No, I mean, I don't put. Well, of course, LeBron. I don't want to even say should be playing better because he's 38 fucking years old.
Yeah,
There's no player that's had this long of a prime and being at this top of his game. And shit, man, like I said, once he passes Kareem, it's 1A, 1B. I don't think there's any more debate that one's better than the other. They're side by side kind of thing. And to do that at 38 and carry these fucking bums, you obviously, like you said, AD can't stay healthy. Russell Westbrook, who needs to come off the bench and not play with them 24/7. It's just it's mesmerizing. At this point, LeBron should not have to be the number one option. That's why they got AD. That's the whole reason why, like do you remember when AD first came? There was that thing about him giving him the 23 right away as a sort of that sign of it's your team kind of thing.
uh-huh. I do think I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, the only reason I remember it was because back when I worked at Champs, when it got announced, the LeBron jerseys went on sale for like a little bit, and then the whole thing were like, you can't do that, too many jerseys to sell, kind of thing. And I missed
Yeah.
out on buying the LeBron jerseys for cheap. Anyways, I don't put as much of this on LeBron. I put a lot of it on the fact that AD can't stay healthy and Rob Pelinka can't assemble a roster for shit. Because granted, of course, LeBron's gonna have his input, but I don't think it's like we'll bend our we'll bend over to your will kind of thing. I think it's
Yeah.
more like, I think this is what our team is lacking. Address it how you can. Austin Reeves, I think, is okay. Max Christie's, I think, is a guy I'd like to see get a bit more burn. I don't know why granted, Matt Ryan tied that game the other night, whatever, but this team should not be as reliant on a 38-year-old as they have been. I think that's the bottom line. And it's just a matter of like, when is AD going to finally bring out that dog?
Never. He's not.
Yeah, I don't think it will, but that's kind of the miracle they need to happen.
It's sad to say, but I think most people would probably agree that Kate or AD is more than likely past his prime, and
Oh,
he
no
he
doubt.
really he really shouldn't be at the age that he is. But this dude's like an old man on the floor already. I mean, he doesn't even play even close to as aggressive as he used to play on the Pelicans.
Yeah,
Like,
he settles for mid-range bullshit.
yeah,
And unless you're DeMar DeRozan or Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, I don't think there's really any reason to take a mid-range.
it's not his game.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, okay. Shit, shitting on Lakers aside, let's talk about this other thing. We talked about this guy earlier. It's Bol Bol. Are you buying stock in that Bol Bol is going to finish top 5 in MIP voting? This is not to say that he's going to win it, because I think we can both agree that because of this whole narrative that's shaped the MIP in these past couple years, it just goes to a player that was supposed to be that good and is now finally becoming it, because Jaw kind of fucked it, for everyone
Yeah.
to lie.
No, I 100% think I have him finishing it, especially if he's like just getting those minutes. Because I think even in the sample size that he's started to get minutes, he's obviously showed up with the time he's been given. I mean, he's had like a 4 block game. He had like 23 and 6 yesterday. Like I think, has a very like diverse game. Um, like he can hit the 3 ball. He obviously is like a fucking giant on the floor, regardless of how skinny he is. He's got a dribble. I personally think we talked about this earlier. I know we did, but I think I would like even spin a hot take that he finishes top 3. Because I mean,
Okay.
realistically, if you think about it, this guy's stat line last year must have been like what, fucking 4 points, 2 rebounds a game, something like that. I don't know. Like, let's pull it. Do you have it up on Basketball Reference right now?
I
I
had
don't.
it up earlier.
But
Here, it was
like,
definitely somewhere around like 4 points or some like
yeah,
that.
like he didn't even have stats
He was
last year.
damn near out the league before this.
Like his career he's 4.2 and 0.4, and now he's averaging 11.6, 7.2, and that doesn't even count for defensive stats on the season. And I think that points per game is going to go up from yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. And it's probably going to go up like for the whole season, regardless. I think I got him finishing top 3.
Top 3. I, I want to say yes, but I think a thing that we're also forgetting is Jonathan Isaac returning. Now, I'm not saying he's going to usurp Bol Bol by any means, but he's some guy that's going to have to get minutes, and it's going to have to come from somewhere. Granted, if he plays at this sort of level and continues to, there's no justification that Jonathan Isaac's really in need at that point. He's just luxury and surplus at that point. And then, maybe you trade him off, send him to, because he's a big, I don't know if you remember, he's like kind of, he's
He hasn't
just,
played in like 700
not
days.
only that, he's just a weird dude. Like, I think it was his rookie year or something. There was a story about how he had like his own sort of, I don't know if it was like some conference or some sort of like public speaking thing, and he invited his teammates and nobody showed up. He's that kind of dude. He's a weirdo. I don't like to like single him out like that, but he's just a guy that is very questionable. And all is just to say, why not send him to the most questionable team, the Nets? Well, no, uh, I'd stick to the top five. I think top three, un- as unfortunate as it is, like the realist in me is saying no. But again, that the optimist motherfucker's peeking in, and I think he definitely can get into that top three, especially if he continues this level of play. And there's all say I agree, but I would disagree with top three. I feel more comfortable saying like, yeah, oh no, Finest is only top three, right? But I think he'll be right outside of that. Like he'll definitely get a lot of love, I think, this year because he's finally showing that. Because like, what was his high school ranking? Let me like
Definitely pretty high.
he was sixth, and he's one of the people who can say that he beat one of the greatest high school teams in California history with like all three Ball brothers. He's one of the people that beat him, and he's nice, so nice. And I definitely hope that this is just the awakening of a crazy good comeback story. But third, I'm kind of iffy on, but top five I would feel comfortable with. But heading from there, Tyrese Maxey is going to cement himself as the second option during this next month without Harden.
I think it's tough because like James Harden is that player that will demand the ball, and I think like Tyrese Maxey could like in some ways, if you were to like look at usage stats, maybe start getting the ball more in his hands. But I don't think he's going to be a distinctive second option. Like James Harden's playing in the background, off ball all the time, and then Joel Embiid's getting the points. Like I do think he's gonna be like how you use 2A and 1A 1B. He's gonna be like the 2B to that situation where he will get a lot of touches, and like I think ideally you would, if you had to choose a number, he'd probably still be the 3. But he's gonna like I think just demand the respect of the ball more based on how he plays this season or this coming month. I mean, he's already been popping off since James Harden has been gone. Um, but yeah, I don't think I have him being the distinctive second option where James Harden takes a backseat role.
Yeah, no, I agree. But in my opinion, the 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 way I fully envision the 76ers being their most successful is if James Harden plays that Chris Paul role, where
Yeah,
it's pass first and you get it where you can get it kind of thing. You know, obviously the way he plays is very offense and shooting it first rather than before like passing it off or anything like that. But not to say he's not that guy because this whole year, beginning to the year, has been this sort of resurgence thing, and it's great to see. But we've seen that don't win basketball games when it really matters. So I think he needs to really let uh, Tyrese kind of take over as that second option. I think it'll definitely make it to where if he goes on one of those days where he shoots less than 15 to 20 shots, you're really questioning, like, why are we getting this guy the ball more for sure? But from there, let's talk about. I got a few here. Let's do a couple more. Okay. The Cavs will be a top three offense this year.
yeah, I think so. I mean, to be honest, like the way I look at offense is one of those things where it's weird because, like, I mean, we talked about earlier where the Timberwolves were technically the best offense in the league last year, but that didn't translate obviously to like a first, second, third, fourth, fifth seed even for them. But I think as far as how I judge offense personally and how it accumulates to wins in a game, I think they are definitely already a top 3 offense. I don't know where I put them, but I mean, like even with like the manpower they do have, I think like statistically they will probably be even a top 3 offense. regardless of standings. I don't think there's like a lot of teams that will measure up to the likes of having Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, even Karis LeVert. Like those three players alone, like are players that are all certified buckets. On any given day, literally win the game just by being like an offensive freak. Um, so yeah, I could say like they might even be the best offense in the league by then.
Ooh.
It's yeah, like the Bucks are definitely I think going to win games more based on defense for sure. I think they will probably hover around the top 5 for sure, regardless. I mean, Drew Holiday is on a heater right now,
Yes, sir,
but I
he
think that
is.
I think that will regress to the mean where he probably starts scoring probably closer to 20 points per game because he's had like numerous 30-point games if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, his
Uh,
his because obviously he had a bit of a slow start. His averages right now is where I think it will be around, which is about like 20-5 or so.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, Chris Middleton will come back, but I think they have the best. I mean, I'm a Celtics bias. I think the Celtics will have a top 3 offense too.
And
Um,
especially when Robert Williams comes back. Oof, that's
I
gonna be
personally
nice.
think like the top 3 teams in the East have. I mean, the Hawks. Oh fuck, this is tough. I don't even think I have any of the teams in the West as a top offense, but that's just because I'm so East heavy right now. Like, I think the Pelicans will probably be statistically one of the better offenses in the league, if I had to guess. But that's the only team I see in the West, and maybe yeah, that's the only team I see in the West, honestly.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. I One thing I will say though is when Ricky Rubio comes back, I think that's just going to give them another guy that can really be the passer and really help set up these other guys. And when you think of guys like Donovan Mitchell, I think has been really brilliant with operating off catch and shoot throughout these first few games. That's been something that is something he heavily relied on, given how much the ball was in his hands in Utah. And oh, the Cavs are they're another team that I thought would have a lot of growing pains just because it's two point guards essentially that really need the ball in their hands to be fully effective, and we've seen that as much as that's you know the preconceived notion, they're somewhat defying it. I think. Granted, I don't think they're all the way like fully like tied together or anything like that, but Cavs are looking Cavs are looking spicy to say for sure.
Yep.
But last one here for the night. It's unfortunate about Kawhi, but with the uncertainty of Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers are going to be a play-in team.
This is one of those things where I gotta. I mean, I think they will be a playing team. I'm just looking at the standings right now, and seeing
Mm.
how it's really going to be. Obviously, the Suns. Okay, I like naming them off, so just so I know if the play-ins is what 7 through 10, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna look at these two.
All right, Suns, Grizzlies, Nuggets, Mavericks, Pelicans. That's 5. Warriors, Mavs, Trailblazers. Even I think the Trailblazers gonna okay Nuggets, and that leaves the Clippers at the 10th spot, fighting against the Spurs, the Kings, the Lakers. That's tough, man. I personally think like the Lakers have what it takes to be a better team than the Clippers right now. That's a weird thing to say. I
Oh,
just shat.
whoa.
I just
Okay.
shat on the Lakers, but I think LeBron is gonna pull it together this season. I don't think he's like made to like miss the playoffs. Like what they were, they weren't a playing team last year. They were the year before that. They were.
I thought. Oh no, I think they fully missed last year, didn't they?
Yeah, they missed last year, and then I remember the year before
Oh,
they beat
when
they
they
beat the
lost to the Suns first. Yeah, they were a playing team, and
yeah
then the year before that,
they
uh,
beat the Warriors and then
no,
played the
the
Suns.
play-in year was the Warriors, and then the year before that was there was no play-in, and it was they didn't make it because LeBron got the groin injury.
Right. Nah, yeah. I probably have the Lakers even taking it over the Clippers right now.
Ooh, okay.
I think this system of figuring out Russ off the bench, like I think that's sustain. I mean, I said it already, and so I'm not gonna like back up from that word. I mean, I do think Russ is sustainable off the bench. I just think the Clippers don't like have like all the manpower. Kawhi is like really who they were relying on to like make a return this season, because everyone was saying like, oh yeah, like John Wall, Kawhi, and PG all playing together. Like that's a top team. But you take literally the best player out of that sentence, and it's like, is John Wall and Paul George at like this time in their careers really going to be like even a top 10 team and like still the best conference in the league? Like, I just don't think so.
I don't personally for
They are a
me.
very good team.
They're no for sure they're a good team. I think they aren't going to be a play-in team, but I think they'll finish like sixth. It's not going to be like they're going to have this crazy like underdog top five kind of season. I think if they, well, granted that's just one below, but I think if they aren't a playing team, it's right at that sixth spot. That's because Paul George, if what everybody is assuming about Kawhi is true, and that he is, as sad as to say, is cooked. Paul George, when you look at carry jobs throughout like this generation of the NBA, the few are as impressive as Paul George's. You know, two back to back 7 game series with the Heatles when he was the only motherfucker on that team. Paul George literally what was it might have been his like I think he had a few wrap up games, but that whole sort of play in effort last year where they literally almost made it back off of coming off of a franchise season. Even in that franchise season, Paul George carried them past the Jazz and Terrence Mann in Game 5. But I think they have all the tools to survive. You know, Reggie Jackson I think is a solid point guard. Luke Kennard's one of the best shooters in the league. Norman Powell is an amazing like guy off your bench. Robert Covington is somebody who I think still needs to get his legs under him after missing the first part of the season, and you could just go on and on to where they're just this sort of, with Kawhi, unarguably one of the most loaded teams in the league. Without him, it's this sort of, it gives off those sort of ragtag vibes, like we're not supposed to be here, but we're gonna be here kind of teams. And it's weird to say that about a team that has, obviously a franchise guy in Paul George, but he's obviously someone that I don't think gets the respect he deserves, given that he's been like a number two option these past few years. And, you know, not this is all that to not only mention that I think they had the best coach in basketball in Tyronn Lue. You know, everybody I think was sort of on this kind of wagon that Tyronn Lue can only make it work when he has big time players. And then you look at last year what he was able to do. Like, if we're going off of just how impressive coaches were and not really caring about records, Tyronn Lue I think should have been the coach of the year. He was down his two best players, and yet they almost made the playoffs. And this is again all just to say that I don't think they'll be a play-in team, but they're not going to be like super duper crazy killing everybody kind of thing. But when you have a guy like Paul George, when you have guys like Norman Powell off your bench, when you have versatile guys like Robert Covington, when you have guys like Nicholas Batum, Terrence Mann, Amir Coffey, who is someone I think that was a really big steal for the contract they got him on. They're armed to really weather the storm of losing a Kawhi. Is it again? It's not a storm where they can weather to where they'll be like top of the West or anything like that, like how a lot of people had them. But this is a team that I think can still make some noise. Not as much noise as people would expect, but noise is noise regardless, I think.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it's hard to say, to be honest.
Yeah,
I like,
they're probably the biggest wild card this year. Outside of like I here's the thing. As much as people are like crazy surprised by the Jazz, and this isn't anything to take away from them, there's I know we were talking about how crazy it would be if they did make it, but I just don't see like a way where they do, especially in like the Western Conference. So I think they'll obviously drop out. So it's just sort of the Clippers, or the Clippers are gonna make that grind, I think.
yeah, I think it is one of those things where there's a lot of teams with a lot of uncertainty right now in the West. Like, in terms of where they're really going to end up. Like the Trailblazers are one of them. The Jazz, I think, would be another. And I think the Clippers fit into that situation or talk
Yeah,
to.
nothing's been like very, very cemented, I feel.
Yeah, like especially in the West. Like I think it's surprising to honestly see the Suns at the top of the West, but I think it's just because they've had it together for a while that they are like just like kind of poised to like at least make a good start. But they're not a playoff team. We've already learned that.
100%.
Um, the only like I'm not really surprised by the standings in the West right now, but it's just because no one's got it together, whereas everyone in the East really does have it together. Like the standings in the East like make 100% more sense than the standings in the West right now.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
totally buy that. Yeah.
but yeah, yeah.
Alrighty. Any like kind of last minute hot takes, anything like that, Chin? You want to call AD a pussy again? Anything along those lines?
I don't even think it's a hot take, but I think Jason Tatum's gonna win MVP this year.
Hoo-hoo! I respect that.
I think he's really out of any player in the league, he's got the most to prove right now. I think any player coming off a lost chip,
And like
especially with the
putting
mental,
booty in the chip too at that.
yeah, especially with the mentality, especially like with the weight on his shoulders, the comparisons of, the great, in my opinion, like for the culture, the greatest shooting guard of all time. Not saying Michael Jordan, but Kobe Bryant. The comparisons to, yeah, just the biggest cultural icon basketball's ever seen, besides again Michael Jordan. Um, and just the weight on his shoulders to like really make the future happen now. He's been showing up. Like this is like Tatum has been, I think, notoriously known for those last few seasons to start off slow, and he's averaging like 30 right now. So I don't think he's gonna slow down. It's like
Respect.
he's averaging like 38 and 6 on like 2 blocks. Like that's I don't know, man. Giannis is gonna get some rest. That's the thing. I think Giannis is obviously the consensus MVP at the moment. Like if you had to stop the league right now and cut it, Giannis would win. But I mean, you know how the Bucks are. They're not like built to like, have to fight for their spot in the Eastern Conference. They're a top three team cemented. And players are gonna get the rest. But Jason Tatum, lock it in now. MVP.
Ooh, respect. My hot take is that Benedict Mathurin is going to take Rookie of the Year from Paulo Banchero. I mean, he might even fucking fuck around and win Sixth Man of the Year the way he's playing and the fact that he's started. But Chris Duarte got injured, so that might be shot. Might be able to like take that and run with it and not be able to relinquish it. But I mean, looking at this, he's shooting 40% from the 46% from the field, 43% from three as a rookie is crazy good. 86% from the free throw line. It's beautiful to see. Canadian Mandem. It's crazy to see the talent that's coming out of our country, which is crazy. Shaden Sharp's another solid guy, but when you look at the circumstances players are in, Benedict Mathurin, I think, would be my rookie of the year right now. Paulo is kind of, Paulo has the ball in his hand 100% of the time, kind of thing. He's able to initiate and be able to kind of like be the man essentially, whereas Benedict Mathurin is not that, and
Yeah.
he's still putting up buckets. He's still getting people like LeBron James to show them who he is, kind of thing, and I just love watching that dude play. But yeah,
Yeah, like not to add too much to that take, but I think he really is like the Tyrese Halliburton of this year, where he's
mm.
like doing the most behind like, I mean, he's doing the most behind Tyrese Halliburton, and Tyrese Halliburton was doing the most behind De'Aaron Fox. I think it's the same parallels, where
That's a good comparison. Yeah, for sure. And those two, I think, are gonna form one of the way it's looking. It could be as good as like fuck it. I'll say it. In a few years, Tyrese Halliburton and Benedict Mathurin might be as good of a backcourt as Trey Young and Dejounte.
damn,
Fuck it, I'll say it because I mean he's already putting up 21 as a rookie. I mean,
that's true.
Tyrese is 20 and 10. It's just when you look at the fact that he's playing this good to start and he hasn't started a single game, crazy. But with that, this has been another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. We appreciate y'all listening. If you made it this far, do all the like, commenting, subscribing, following, 5-star, all that good stuff. And we will see y'all again soon. Stay safe, stay blessed, and just say it again. We'll see y'all soon.
Peace.
Back shots.
Fuck LeBron.